The news now in detail, and the Speaker of Parliament has recalled members for an urgent business on Tuesday, May 2. A letter signed and dispatched by the Speaker, who is out of the country, has asked the MPs to be present in their numbers for the urgent business. Our parliamentary correspondent, Komla Kuluche, joins us via Zoom for more on this. Thank you so much for your time, Komla. I know the House went on recess on March 31. Do you have any idea or any reason for this recall? Komla, can you hear me? If you can hear me, can you unmute, Komla? Komla Kluche is having difficulty hearing us, and the Speaker of Parliament has recalled the House for an urgent business, and we'll get details and update our viewers.
Right. Reminder, you're still watching News 360, our major news bulletin for the day. There's just some little technical hitches there. We'll try and re-establish contacts with our parliamentary correspondent, Komla Kluche, to give us more updates of that all-important sermon by the Speaker of Parliament. But let's do some other big stories today. And the former Minister of Environment, Science and Technology and Innovation, Professor Kwabena Frimpong-Boateng, has alleged that some top government officials are engaged in illegal mining, popularly known as galamsey. In a 36-page letter of response to the President, the Chief of Staff and the Police Service, Professor Frimpong-Boateng noted that his efforts at fighting illegal mining were frustrated by some government officials, some of whom are in the office of the President. Now, after the allegations, President Akufo-Addo asked the Ghana Police Service to investigate the assertions and to get to the bottom of the matter. My colleague Martin Isididata has been sampling through this 36-page document. Has just joined me in studio. Martin, I'm sure it's been a long day for you going through this 36-page document. What exactly are you getting from this document?
Right. So primarily, what we chanced upon, or the document we chanced upon, is a report from the former Environment Minister, Professor, who had submitted that to Cabinet or government. And he touched on very few things that included the fact that the directive and the authority of the President to fight galamsey had been totally disregarded, totally thrown to the dogs, and people within government and within the NPP party were involved actively in galamsey, and many of them plotted to frustrate his efforts in all the campaigns that had been waged against the illegal mining. So I'll give specific names captured in the report. They were talked about in different capacities. They played different roles. Some were in support of the campaign. Some were, the ones that were masterminding the activities to ensure that the fight against illegal mining did not
and I guess myself
succeed.
and a lot more Ghanaians will be interested in knowing exactly who were the names he mentioned as being a part of this.
So if you go to our website, we have actually uploaded the full 36-page report there. But then the names of the likes of Lord Kome, Charles Niteko, Frank Esiedu Bekwin, popularly known as Protozoa, Gabio Tredako, Kweku Baku Jr., renowned journalist.
Who is not at the presidency, is he?
Yeah, no, so these are people captured in the report. Okay. So, and then there's Kojo Opon Kroma, there's Charles Owusu, who's the Director of Operations at the Forestry Commission, and a few others. So these are people, some known, some unknown. But then according to the report from Professor Frimpong-Boateng, they played different roles. So there are portions of the report where, for instance, he talks about when Operation Vanguard was launched, for instance, there were times before they get to some mining sites, soldiers there had been withdrawn, or there were soldiers or men in uniform who were preventing some of the activities to stop the galamsey. There were places they went to and saw soldiers there who were supporting or protecting people who were undertaking, illegal mining activities. Then, if you go to some of the specifics, he says, for instance, there were times he had calls from some of these known or unknown people within government asking him to reverse some decisions he had taken against the illegal mining. But then they were told, for instance, that he personally, as in Professor Frimpong-Boateng, had come under severe attacks from some of these people, warning him to stop. He said that there were times the chief of staff, Madam Frema, got information, and it looked as though that she was not even aware of some of the decisions that were being taken behind her back. And he, Professor Frimpong Boateng, by the time he gets or takes a certain decision, there were calls for him to reverse or stop or suspend any action against those that were involved in the illegal mining. Maybe for reasons as of now that the report is new, well, it came out in 2021 when he submitted it to the president. We reached out to Professor Frimpong Boateng himself, and he confirmed that he authored that report, submitted it to the president. So it is not like it's a concocted or cooked up document, and that it is actually quite genuine. And if you come to a portion, like I think that was around page 12 or 13 of the report, it talks about mining activities in the Western region area, where he made very interesting points of note that persons within the NDC were also as actively involved in mining, and some of them illegal mining, just as the NDC, just as the NPP in the Western region, specifically that region. That's what he talked about. When he was talking about the Eastern region, for instance, he said they had indication that some persons, in fact, an MPP youth organizer in the area was mining close to the president's house in the Eastern region. They went there and actually found out that it was true and that it was even affecting the president's house. So they had to put in efforts to ensure that that was halted immediately. So it's quite damning, quite revealing, and we are waiting to hear what exactly the presidency will say about it. But one key point to note is that these names that have been mentioned, or the entire report as of now, still remains an allegation.
Right.
So
I have
waiting.
seen a letter supposedly coming from Kwaku Baku Jr.
Yes,
responding
so he's giving
to,
his response
right,
to the accusations that Frimpong Boateng has leveled against him. So we are awaiting to see what exactly government will say. You would also know that the last about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when Professor Frimpong Boateng granted some media interviews, that was when he talked about how he was frustrated in his fight against Galamsey. So it was then that he mentioned that specific individuals in the seat of government at the presidency and in the NPP were involved. So the president heard that and asked the Ghana Police Service to immediately investigate and get to the bottom of it. So I think it was throughout that process that some of these letters have come out to the public, and we have looked through, we have sought to be sure that it came from him. He says yes. We are waiting to see what else we can get from that.
Martin Isiedu, that with details of that document coming in from Professor Frimpong Boateng. I'm sure if you want to grab a copy of that 36-page document, just go to our website, 3news.com, and grab a copy for yourself.
Let's now go back to our earlier story where the Speaker has recalled members of Parliament for an urgent business on Tuesday, May 2. A letter signed and dispatched by the Speaker, who is out of the country, has asked the MPs to be present in their numbers for the urgent business. Our parliamentary correspondent, Komla Kluche, joins me for more on this. Thank you so much for your time, Komla. The House went on recess on March 31. Do you have any reasons for this recall?
Well, from what we are getting, before the House went on recess, there were some 3 loan agreements they were supposed to consider. But because of the times and also the fact that they were supposed to consider some other matters, they didn't have enough time to be able to do this. But the majority pushed quite hard for them to have this go through. But the minority shut it down, even though the Speaker wanted them to take it. But then they have had to go on the break, purposely because members of the House, one, were tired, because this was way after 2 a.m. And also the fact that they didn't have the full complement of membership of the House, i.e., you recall there was an MP who was on his way to come to the House to vote on that particular day, had an accident and was rushed to the hospital. There was also another MP who was with him and was taking care of him because he was a medical doctor. And also the fact that the MPP MP who had lost his life, that's the Kumewu MP, making them not to have the full complement of all the MPs. But these are the 3 loan agreements that they are considering. The financing agreement between the government of Ghana, represented by the Ministry of Finance, and International Development Association, ID, of the World Bank Group, for an amount of $60 million as a third additional financing for the Ghana COVID-19 Emergency Preparedness Response Project. The second one is a financing agreement between the government of Ghana, represented by the Finance Ministry and the International Development Association of the World Bank Group, for an amount of $150 million to finance the West Africa Food System Resilience Program Phase 2. And the final one is on lending agreement between the government of Ghana, represented by the Ministry of Finance and the Development Bank of Ghana, for an amount of 170 million euros to support the establishment of a financially sustainable development bank under the finance contract agreement between the government of Ghana, represented by the Minister of Finance. So, I mean, after the back and forth, the majority leader pushed that this loan agreement should be passed. In fact, the Finance Committee has already considered them. The report has indicated the decision was just a majority one on the Finance Committee. The minority is averse to this because for them, this is adding up to the already ballooning debt that the country has had. So, but before the rules, this was the conversation between the majority leader, and the Speaker before the week.
Mr. Speaker, in this House, whenever we have not exhausted the business of the House and their critical businesses, we continue. Mr. Speaker, indeed, these bills, the financial bills, we ought to have considered them at the previous meeting. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, it went from 21st of December to 22nd of December. And when we mentioned say, our colleagues said, no, we're tired, we should adjourn, and when we come back into the next meeting, there will be the first ones to be handled. Lo and behold, we have seen their resistance. And today is the last day of this meeting to consider today. They are disputing the claim by their own minority leader that we are closing today. The Speaker, not to belabor the point and not to enter the fray of pedestrianism, I'll suggest that what is here, that we should approve of these rules before we adjourn. Because, Mr. Speaker, what has happened? We cannot even predict what may happen if we should reschedule for consideration these loans.
I love you so much. Don't let us continue, because I heard you this morning and you were lamenting and urging members to take care of their health and that kind of thing. Please, I beg you, don't let's continue this way. I am prepared to recall Parliament. I am prepared to recall Parliament to come and consider these loans between 14th and 15th of April. Can we agree on that? To recall Parliament to come back 14th and 15th.
Now, Komla, the Speaker is also urging MPs to be present in their numbers. How crucial is this?
Well, it's quite a crucial one. The Speaker, as I talk to you now, he's in Gibraltar on official assignment. He's moving from Gibraltar from Saturday thereabout, heading towards London, where he would also be having another official assignment joined by other MPs as well. And from my understanding, the sources within tells me that, well, all of this is as a result of the conditionalities that the IMF is looking at. They need to be able to have some firm backing in terms of financing, in as much as they are seeking a $3 billion bailout. So all of this are things that the IMF is equally pushing undertone for them to be able to have before they will be able to get the $3 billion that they are seeking from the IMF.
Thank you so much for your time. And Komla Kluche is our parliamentary correspondent.
And just to take off from where Komla landed, another story that's connected to the IMF. Organized labor has cautioned individual unions and their pension schemes fund managers to stay away from government's new debt restructuring program. Spokesperson of Organized Labor, Dr. Yauba, gave the warning at an emergency news conference here in Accra.
The meeting was to consider the Finance Ministry's proposed alternative offer for pension funds in a new debt restructuring program after it had written to the Board of Trustees of pension funds. According to government, the offer is necessary to save the economy from further decline. Some labor unions had served notice not to participate in the new deal, just as resolved in December ahead of the domestic debt exchange program. Organized labor reaffirmed their earlier position.
We therefore urge the Board of Trustees of all pension funds not to honor the invitation to participate in the so-called alternative offer for pension funds. Any attempt by government or the Board of Trustees of pension schemes to undermine the MOU will be fiercely resisted by organized labor. The leadership of organized labor further urges all organized labor groups to close ranks and abide by the tenets of the MOU we have signed with government.
This is a national security matter, and we cannot take it lightly. And therefore, organized labor, we are saying that the arrangement we had with government, we still stand by it. And if government feels that it has any other plans, it can come back to the table where we signed the agreement. Let them come and produce their presentation. We will look at it. We will go back and consider if it is something that is reasonable and we think that it is in the best interest, and I repeat, it is in the best interest of our working colleagues who will be going on retirement, fine, so be. But if it is not in their best interest, then certainly it will not see the light of day. Thank you.
The Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana confirmed their new position.
You have just signed an MOU calling for, and that's a position of organized labor, which you are part. And the MOU is saying that government should come better and explain further, and all labor union groupings and their fund managers should stay away from this new arrangement. How do you synchronize the two?
Well, like organized labor has said, what organized labor is saying is that based upon the MOU that was signed, the government should come and make a presentation to them on the proposals that they've given to the Board of Trustees. Well, it's fair. It's once you sign an MOU with organized labor, it's very needful that you also present to them this proposal. What I'm saying is for CLOSAC, based upon our investment portfolio, we don't have a problem.
But don't you think it compromises your position?
It doesn't compromise my position. I spoke for CLOSAC, and now if there are other schemes within organized labor that has got a problem, it's my duty to also talk for them.
In a related development, the Deputy Minister of Employment and Labour Relations has assured organized labour that government will not touch their pension funds without their consent.
It's also to prove to you that the Labour Ministry which you belong to is so responsive to your causes. Whatever we do together is more like a marriage affair. We disagree and agree and move forward. So comrades, I am here to be with you and to show to you that we respect whatever inputs you make into our governance structure. And for us, we will always make sure that whatever comes out of your deliberations will be tabled on the doorsteps of leadership, as it was mentioned by you.
A reminder, you're still watching News 360. We're streaming live on Facebook, also live on your DSTV channel 279. If you feel strongly about any of our top stories this hour, feel free to share your concerns, your comments, and your views as well with us. Now, a coalition of media groupings is demanding the immediate repeal of Sections 76 of the Electronic Communications Act and 208 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act. Now, according to the group, which includes the Ghana Journalists Association, growing criminalization of free speech in the country is becoming unbecoming.
The latest demand by the coalition follows an earlier petition by the Media Foundation for West Africa to the Attorney General over similar concerns last year following a rise in the arrests of journalists across the country. Journalists and activists arrested in the last 2 years have been picked up based on the two provisions, Section 76 of the Electronic Communications Law and 208 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act. The arrest of Radio Adan journalist Noah Dame, according to the group made up of the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association of Ghana, the Ghana Journalists Association of Ghana, the Media Foundation for West Africa, and the Private Newspaper Publishers Association of Ghana, becomes one too many of the criminalization of speeches by journalists. Addressing a news conference, President of the Ghana Journalists Association, Albert Jumfor, said failure to repeal the laws would worsen the country's press freedom index.
The victims of the erstwhile criminal libel law were also dealt with in line with the law. Indeed, many of the world's intolerant and autocratic governments typically deal with decent and press offenses by exploiting the law. Hence, our call for a repeal of these two laws. We are also much aware that the recent detention of Noah Dame has been picked by the Reporters Without Borders, and that may consequently affect our ranking in the coming days.
Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, for his part, called out the president on his position on the two laws in the past.
As the offense of publishing false news, therefore, currently stands, it is, in my view, inconsistent with the constitutional provisions on free expression being overly broad, accordingly not proportionate to the legitimate public interest sought to be protected by our freedom of expression provisions in our constitution. I am basically speaking in a different voice, but saying what President Akufo-Addo said. So the question to ask is, what has changed?
Attacks on free speech form part of worrying details captured in the 2023 U.S. State Department report, and with World Press Freedom Day on the horizon, media watchers fear Ghana may decline even further.
Still on the media, there is lack of transparency and limited access to ownership of broadcast media in the country. That's according to reports by the University of Ghana Department of Communication Studies. It indicates a political capture of the media landscape, with partisan actors controlling public discourse through their media outlets. Christian Yale has been studying the report.
Although there is media pluralism in the country, there is also an increasing concentration of the media in few hands. The State of the Ghanaian Media Report finds this as a major threat to media freedom and democracy. Those whose conduct are to be checked by the media are rather getting considerable power and influence over the media.
With every alternation in power comes political influencers who want to obtain media authorization in order to increase their sphere of influence. So, of concern is the politicization in the media, in media ownership, and the fact that it's opaque, it's not transparent.
The inadequacies of the current structure at the National Communications Authority, NCA, have been blamed for this situation. The report says governments grant frequency authorizations to their sympathizers when in power, and these political faces behind some of the media ownership leave room for partisan actors to control public discourse to a larger extent.
The lacuna has been occasioned because we don't have a broadcasting law. So we do have a problem. So we know that young people are susceptible to content that they consume. We know that false news and disinformation has become an epidemic. So there needs to be a sort of a framework that will help us address some of these issues and mitigate it.
Many believe the lack of identities behind some media organizations raises legitimate conflict of interest concerns.
It is easy for us to mention, oh, but we know this person owns media, we know this person owns media. Those are mostly the Accra-based media, the ones who are really making a lot of noise. If you take the whole country and the fact that, for instance, there are over 500 radio stations on air, then we really don't know the people behind the radio stations.
This is why in 2016 we put together the LI 2224, which is the Content Standards in Electronic Communication. Our view is that when we put the law out, a lot of people didn't understand. Gradually there's understanding emerging about the need to address these issues. So what we need to do is to go back to the drawing board.
Currently, there is a move by the Registrar General's Department to better clarify the registration of companies and to have their directors or managers individually listed. This may help to ensure transparency and credibility. Christian Yali, TV3 News, Accra.